Hello everyone. So we're not going to break cards today. Just kind of wanted to talk to you guys about the issue with everyone trying to get the Bowman First Edition on the Topps website, and what it kind of said to me about the industry as a whole. So I was on the Topps website yesterday, I guess that was Wednesday evening, and it was crashed out. No one could log in, no one could buy anything. Stuff would get stuck in a cart and then disappear, and then before you knew it, all of it was gone. A lot of blame goes to the bots and to Topps for not banning bots or for having some sort of raffle situation go on there. That's not the concern that I really have, but I think it really opened the door for discussion on what's actually going on in that industry. So if you go back to the late 1800s, pretty much every major industry was controlled in a monopoly. The railroads, oil, every means of production, anything that was considered a necessity was essentially controlled with a monopoly. And the way they would establish these monopolies was through the free market capitalist system that we had, meaning you can compete, but there was no fair competition. So Standard Oil would go into your town, buy up your oil company, or if you said no, they would lower their prices so much that you couldn't compete, and they would just drive you out of business. So when Theodore Roosevelt came in to the White House, he was the trust buster. So he went in and said, you guys can't operate like this anymore. We're not having any more monopolies. We need more freedom of competition. So we're going to level the playing field. They broke up Standard Oil, all the railroad monopolies, things of that nature. We're still stuck with a few today. If you look back, I think it was like 15 years ago, and Microsoft had to break off a lot of their stuff. It still happens. So. But one industry that seems to keep going under the radar because it might not be as massive of an industry as the rest of those is the sports cards market. So Major League Baseball is a monopoly, and that's recognized by the United States government, and that's why when the steroid era was going on, these guys were having to go testify before Congress because as a monopoly, they were allowed to operate because there's no other true competition. I mean, there's independent leagues and stuff, but everyone knows if you're watching baseball, you're watching Major League Baseball. So when they were going before Congress, that was because Congress was their enforcement body. Now, somehow, Major League Baseball is allowed to award exclusive licensing contracts to apparel companies and sports card companies. I'm not sure how that's allowed, but I can go buy a coaster or a keychain or a mug or a front license plate frame for my car from 10 different manufacturers that all have some sort of an MLB or NHL and NBA, NFL license deal. So we're going to focus on sports cards because that's what this channel is about. Before Prohibition, if you went to a bar, they would probably have a couple signs, but they would always be the same kind of signs because what would happen is the producer for Milwaukee's Best or Old Style or whoever beer or Old Granddad or Jack Daniel's whiskey, they would directly distribute their product, and they would go to the bars and say, hey, cut this guy out, cut out Jim Beam, and we'll give you XXX, right? So we're going to give you stools, we're going to give you signs, we're going to give you coasters, help with equipment, things like that. And they would try to basically maneuver their own way to the end consumer and skip a distribution process. So after Prohibition ended in 1933, the U.S. government said, look, this is no way to regulate anything. This is not a way for us to allow this industry to go on, because it's going to lead to, you know, an small amount of companies monopolizing the market. So what they did is they set up the 3-tier system, which meant if you produce the beer, you have to sell to a distributor, who then is only allowed to sell to a retailer, so the bar or the liquor store or whoever, grocery store, and then they are responsible for selling it to you, right? So you got the producer, distributor, retailer, consumer. This has worked for a century. No one's complaining. Now bars are getting everything brought in by the same distributor. So your Hennessy's coming in with your Jack Daniels, with your Old Granddad, with your Smirnoff. All that stuff is coming off the same truck through a distributor who's got ABC licensing deals through the government, right? But it's all an oversight kind of thing. With trading cards, Topps is a monopoly because they're the only ones allowed to produce licensed product for Major League Baseball. Now, I know Panini does Donruss baseball, but that's not the same, right? It's like Major League Baseball versus the independent leagues. There's not much competition there. So they then sell to a handful of distributors at whatever price they're setting. I don't know how to find that kind of information. I'm not even sure if it's public information or not. And then those distributors, some of them go out and will only sell wholesale to a retailer. So that'll be when your LCS gets a shipment of Topps cards, they're getting it from that distributor. But the problem becomes when the producer can then also be a retailer and the distributors become a retailer, because then they're setting a market price, and the LCSs and the small online operations can't compete because the distributors are getting the bulk discount from Topps, and then instead of doing what a normal supply chain would do and sell down and then middleman it down the road, they're cutting all those guys out and they're directly creating a retail price for their product. I don't know if that's illegal. I know there are no regulations in place. I know that when the Topps website went down, and by the time it was back up and going, 1% to 2% of the people I follow on Twitter, on Reddit, on YouTube, maybe 1% or 2% of them got something. So kind of sheds light on why an industry would be allowed to operate like this as a legal monopoly, but then also be held under no sort of scrutiny outside of the end consumer. Well, we all love cards, and that's why we are doing this, right? We're buying them. So I don't know what kind of voice or power we have outside of just not buy it, but I'll continue to buy baseball cards. I'm likely to slow down quite a bit more and just buy kind of what's out there already, but it's just disappointing, and they have no one to answer to. So when Sapphire got released last year, it was the same trouble. Bots came in, crashed the site, bought up all the product at $50, by the way. That's what it was selling for, online exclusive. And I think the last box I paid $315 for about a month and a half ago. So a 600 and whatever % increase in price. How, I just don't understand how that's fair to anyone. But at the end of the day, we're paying for it. And I don't know if we speak with our wallets or how we get it done, but something needs to change because Topps has no incentive to change. Why would they fix their website? They're selling out product at first glance, right? They're letting the bots in. because they want to sell their product. And they have no incentive to make it easier for us to buy it as the end consumer, as the collector, because there's no one allowed to come in and compete with them. So why? Why change? And they'll, get on Twitter and, our deepest, sincerest apologies for the website crashing and blah, blah, blah. You'll have another chance tomorrow and the next day. And then you've already got the massive distributors, like the top 3 guys, the top 3, at least e-commerce sites that sell sports cards are already out there selling them for double and more. And when all their prices begin to fall in line with each other and they're the top buyers of cards, it just, something isn't right. I don't know how to connect all the dots. Like I said, I'm not an investigative reporter, but something stinks. And at the end of the day, it's your local card shop, and it's you and me and people that I know that collect cards that are paying the real price here. So the higher up the food chain you are, the better opportunity you have. You're not restricted in any way on how you can sell your product. You're getting the huge, massive, deep discounts to undercut your competition. It just stinks of late 1800s, early 1900s monopolies. And for some reason, there are no scrutiny outside of us whining and complaining on Twitter. Governments aren't going to step in. It's not a big enough industry for them to cry about. Their constituency doesn't care, for the most part, I wouldn't think. So I don't know what we do, how we change it. But these exclusive deals between Topps and Major League Baseball, Panini with the NBA, those need to go away, because America's capitalist foundation for the last 100 years has been equal competition is going to breed the highest quality product. And we've seen Topps products kind of fall off quality-wise. Customer service is going down. They're not... all the redemption cards that you can find are ridiculous. I'm not allowed to sell you a product without having that product in my hand. The fact that they get away with that is unbelievable to me. And no one does anything. And then when they're expired, too bad. That card's sitting on a shelf somewhere. They're just not going to give it to you. It's too bad. Don't buy old boxes. That's going to be their thing. So these old boxes that people are paying $2,000 sometimes for, they're not getting the cards that should come in that box. But like I said, until the illegal monopoly and trust agreements between these top 5 to 10, let's just say it's 20, it's creating an unfair competitive environment, and it should not be allowed under our capitalist system. That's my rant for today. If you guys have any thoughts, concerns, ideas, anything like that, I'd love to see them in the comments. You can find me on Twitter at thebearfighter. Also find me on Reddit at thebearfighter. So yeah, you guys let me know. You guys stay safe, and I'll catch you next time. Adios.